Hello, welcome to the West Coast Bias. I'm Andrew Nemec, joined as always by Jason Suke and Nemec. Hey, Sleepy Bear, you slept in a little bit, buddy.
Little bit today. I got the old, we were going to go about 9. None of you got a text saying, hey, we need to go 9:15, 9:30. And I was like, hey, how about more like 9:45? Normally I'm a Sunday. Sundays are like my tough days. Normally I kind of get up and I go do dumb crap in the morning. And for whatever reason, mainly probably because I'm old and stayed up too late last night doing things. My body was like, nope, we're gonna lay in bed. I got the nudge this morning. Your phone's ringing. I was like, oh, give me 5 minutes and an energy drink and we'll be all right. The breakfast of champions, right?
So we planned to go live at 9, and then I had to take my wife to work because some stuff was going on that way. And then I was texting you, and you're really good. I think both of us are pretty good about responding to one another right away to make sure we're on the same page. When you don't respond, you're usually either on air or at the gym, and you'll get to me very quickly. So the fact that you didn't respond, I'm like, he's wrestling on the mat with some sweaty men. But no, you were in bed with not a man. So
I was well. I hope not, as far as we know. Although, hey, it's 2025, actually almost 2026, so that's okay. If that's
whatever.
what you don't know what I'm doing.
Everything is okay.
Everything's okay. No, I was passed out. So
the phone rang. Okay.
But
Dan Lanning's heart rate after the second half.
Jeebus, man. Who was it? I think it was Dante Moore. It might have been Malik Benson. I forget which one. I was kind of reading through some of the post game quotes, and so I think it might have been Benson who said, by the way, what a find he's been at the, with everyone being out. I don't know if they're here without Malik Benson, and he's been so good. And I thought it was interesting. They pointed out that, when he came over, he was done. He was a Pavia guy. He sued for an extra year of eligibility because of the JUCO stuff. So when he came to Oregon, he was a scout team guy. He wasn't even on the depth chart. Right? He was a scout team guy. And to see where he's at, that's just a cool story. I know that we love to crap on college football and the NIL, and I get it. I totally understand why it turns some people off, but that's a cool story. And Pavia is too. Again, totally. I mean, I totally get why people don't like that kid, right? I totally get it. But think about what you were like when you were 21, 22.
He's frequently giving me Trailer Park Johnny Manziel, which is rough.
Totally get it. But here's I guess here's my thing. If we go back 5 years, 6 years, 4 years, right? That kid is a trailer park whatever, and he has no money, and God knows what that kid's doing, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know. Maybe he figures it out eventually. But in this space, this world, and he'll never make a dime in the NFL, right? That guy's not going to play. He's 5'10". He's not going to play in the NFL. There's no money to be made there. And that guy now, if he is smart, and maybe he's not, I don't know, but that guy has made himself enough money that if he's smart, he is really taking care of his future, at least giving himself a big leg up, as opposed to, and maybe he's a dumbass with it, but at least he's a dumbass that has some money, and a dumbass that has some house, and that isn't going to just like implode. So as much as it's annoying, would I rather have him have this opportunity or be some dumbass that's dumb broke without a college education? At least now he's got a degree, hopefully from a really good school in Vanderbilt. He's got some money. Like, I don't want any of these kids. I think sometimes we fall into this trap of, well, this kid's young and he's, screw him. And what does he have done to deserve? Would you rather that kid be dead broke? I think about me coming out of college and not a nickel to my name. And, my couple years in the NFL didn't net me any money. I think when I walked away from the NFL, I had maybe 75 grand in the bank, because it's not like I was making a bunch of money being a practice squad player. And that money was gone in a year from living. I didn't buy a car. I had a used Ford Expedition, that was 12 years old. That was a car that I had when I was in the NFL. So, I think about the opportunity these kids have to maybe grow a nest egg, right? To actually, go buy a house, and no matter what happens, you have that, and maybe able to even trade on his name, for the next handful of years. And those are all good things. Even if you don't like the kid, which I don't want that kid to be broke. I don't want that kid to have a harder life. So whether it's Pavia or Malik Benson probably would have been a guy that was done, probably would have gone
maybe
to an
Canadian
NFL
football league or something.
Maybe goes to an
Just 'cause
NFL
of the
camp.
speed.
Yeah, maybe goes to an NFL camp and gets cut, and and again is me, right? Like spends a year or two on a practice squad, you get cut 6-7 times, whatever. But he does this, he gets to go to Oregon, puts a couple bucks in his pocket again. Maybe it's enough money where he can buy a house, and he puts out here, shows what he can do now, given an opportunity. Maybe he gets drafted in the 5th round, next year of development. And maybe that guy, it's the LeGarrette Blount thing, right? LeGarrette Blount, at one point was being written off and is this loser and kick him off the team and whatever you think. They let him stick around and gave him a second chance, and LeGarrette Blount ended up playing 10 years in the NFL and winning Super Bowls. Like, sure. There's the more time you can have to give kids opportunities to make something of their life and outgrow dumb 20-year-old mistakes, I'm all for.
Sure.
Back to my original point, though. I think it was Malik Benson. Before I got distracted there, I brought up Pavia. I was like, I shouldn't have done that.
We were supposed to start with Oregon football, and whoa, we went sideways quick.
Well, but I think it was Malik Benson who said, "Dude, there's no music in the locker room." He goes, "It's almost like we lost." Tosh Lapoy said flat out, "I'm pissed." Lanning, my God, like that dude is wired. So it and I get why that's the narrative, and then fans are gonna pile on because you're hearing that. When you hear that that's what your coach feels, and when you're hearing that from your players, obviously the fans are going to do that. And then you look at kind of the totals, and people are saying, well, it's the first time anyone's put up 500 yards against Oregon. It's the most points they've given up all year, and so it snowballs into this narrative. And I just would like to tell everyone, just with 3 minutes to play in the third quarter, I believe it was 48-13, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep,
48-13. And JMU quit that block punt. 15. I don't know what his. I have no idea what his name is, but number 15, and not the good 15. 15 was their defensive end, who actually was a pretty good player who did. That guy on that punt return on the punt block, he just didn't want to be there.
Right. And
that's when I legitimately, in fact, I tweeted it out. I said, I legitimately feel bad for James Madison because they don't deserve this. Right. Everyone's going to use them as an excuse why these games shouldn't happen, why group of 5 teams, now group of 6, have no business being on the field. Their entire season is going to get dismissed. Everyone's just going to, and it's just going to be this cheap pile on. And that kid didn't want to be there. I've been in games like that where you are just getting your ass handed to you. Mm-hmm. And all that is he just was sitting at the end of that. Go back and watch the play. And he just was like, I don't want to get hit anymore. Yeah. Right. That kid across from me is bigger, stronger, faster. I'm tired of this. I'm getting embarrassed. And he just stopped. He quit. And I was like, they don't want to be here. I legitimately feel bad. That's what Oregon had done. Then the interception happened. Right. And I'll give James Madison credit. They kept playing because for a while.
Let's say, because we haven't even started with the Oregon beat James Madison 51-34.
Oh God, yeah.
Like we haven't even we haven't set it up. So Oregon beats James Madison in the first round of the college football playoff, the last college football playoff game of the first round. Oregon wins it 51-34. Absolutely dominates the first half of this game. We start talking about the fact that Dante Moore is putting together a masterclass with a number of deep shots that looked incredible. Some throws over the middle. In the second half, Oregon gives up 28 points, and two narratives really persist from this game. One, Oregon's defense is in trouble, and two, we need to stop letting group of 5 teams be in this thing. I think both of them are cowardly narratives, and I want to talk about both of them. I think the far more interesting narrative, and you touched on it early, is second chances and Oregon's job. Everybody knows when Oregon gets a Bo Nix, a Dylan Gabriel, that they're going to have success. Christian Gonzalez, those types of players. This year, to me, and you look at what's changed in this Oregon team, it's giving kids a chance who find a culture fit, who thrive. And that's Bear Alexander on defense, who was on his last opportunity, and Malik Benson, who was past his last opportunity, but the NCAA changed the rule and he flourishes. To me, unfortunately, we're going to talk about James Madison and we'll get into it, but James Madison not belonging in this game. We'll talk about, how the college football playoff is not set up right. They know that. There's reasons for it. We'll get into that. But to me, the much better takeaway, the much more interesting takeaway, is that two guys who were on their last leg of chances, who in college football 10 years ago were done. Yeah. Bear Alexander on his third and fourth chance. You don't transfer 3 and 4 times. That doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
And Malik Benson was literally out of eligibility. Both of those guys are tone-setting, game-changer X factors for a team that's got a shot to win the national title. So, yeah, I want to get into the second half. We can get into all that, but we kind of went Pavia and jumped around. I did want to give us the setup of here was the score, here's what actually happened last night, and here's where we're at.
Yeah. And this goes back to what I was originally saying about, whether it's Benson or Pavia or any of these guys, these can be life-changing things. For a lot of these kids, this is their last opportunity to make something like this happen. And I'm not here to take shots at people's intelligence or aptitude in other areas, but it's hard in this world to make serious life-changing money. It's very challenging. And this is an opportunity that everyone on this field has an opportunity now in college to make life-changing money and maybe set yourself up to have life-changing money over the next handful of years. Maybe not enough to retire, but again, enough to set yourself up where you can buy a business, you can buy a house, and a lot of these kids come from absolutely nothing. I think about Gardner Minshew, and I know it's a different, because it wasn't necessarily in the NIL era. This is when you could have graduate transfers, and they just started to kind of modernize the system a little bit. But Gardner Minshew was on his way down to Alabama to be a GA, a graduate assistant. And Mike Leach was like, oh, you want to come up here and I'll give you a shot. And Gardner Minshew is now making millions of dollars in the NFL because someone reached out and was like, hey, man, you want another shot? Bear Alexander was on his way. And I don't know Bear Alexander from Adam. I don't know what his life is off field. I couldn't tell you. But I promise you that under the old system, Bear Alexander is out of football right now. And more than likely, my guess is not doing something fantastic, right? Like I don't think he's a super academic guy, and maybe again he's just working a 9 to 5. Maybe he develops an app or something, or becomes a social media. I don't know. I couldn't tell you, but I've played with a lot of guys that were really, really talented that for one reason or other didn't work out. And sometimes it takes a lot of those guys a long time to kind of figure something out. And maybe they do down the road, but there's a guy that has changed his life. He's absolutely changed his life. And that's why for all the people that love to crap on the system, you're not going to get it. You're not going to get it from me. All these guys now that instead of wallowing obscurity for 3 or 4 years at small schools, while it is crappy thing, but anyone that's good at JMU, if you're an all conference player at a group of 6 school, you will be making serious money at a group of 4 team the very next year. And while that does stink, and we can talk about that as maybe why maybe the group of 6 teams are not going to be as competitive as they used to be under the olden days. And while that stinks for a competitive balance and for the teams, it's great for the players. Sure. So I don't know. I just think when I look around football today and I see all these kids that are getting second and third and fourth chances and making the most of it and making real money and hopefully putting themselves on the path to really set themselves up in life, as opposed to 25 years ago when I played and no one had that opportunity. You just won't get me to say a negative thing about those opportunities. But you are right that Oregon has just done, and the schools that have done this are schools that have thrived. Indiana has done this better than anyone. Indiana's team is made up of almost, the entire team is made up of cast-offs like this, right? I remember
from James Madison.
James Madison, right?
Their core came last year where you say, oh, this team's frisky. When
13.
Kurt Signetti brought a bunch of James Madison kids with him.
Yep. I remember the year that Mel Tucker got his big extension, and we know what Mel did with it, but all those Kenneth Walker and all those guys, cast-offs, transfers. And Michigan State, the year Florida State went undefeated. And got left out of the playoff. All cast-offs, guys that were given second and third chances. And so the schools that have done that well, the schools that have been able to identify diamonds in the rough and identify talent, because look, you still need to recruit at a high level. And last night, what we saw was a team that was uber talented and a team that wasn't. And you're not going to beat those. And again, that's a conversation we can have for the group of 6 versus the power 4. Mm-hmm. You just, when you athletically or James Madison, you are not going, this isn't basketball. You're not going to backdoor, Princeton offense football. It's Jims and Joes. It's hard to beat the gorilla when you are when you're a lemur. It's just the sport doesn't lend itself to that. But, Oregon, like you mentioned, Bo Nix, cast off. Dylan Gabriel wasn't a cast off, but he was a guy that was on his third school. They've done this a lot. Their transfer portal has been hammer. Even a guy like Derek Harmon, who was good at Michigan State, but he wasn't that. And he came in and was an absolute killer at Oregon.
Caldwell played great.
Yeah,
next to Harmon last year. I mean,
he was from and he was a Houston kid.
Look at Kennedy this year.
Yeah,
Kennedy at times, I think he's the highest graded defensive back or corner in nickel corner in PFF grade for the entire playoff. Like he's been a sensation for him.
Yeah, and Isaiah World has been a nice player, and he came from Nevada with all the hype in the world. Harkey has been the better tackle, and Harkey was from North Texas, and did not have the fanfare. Now, Pregnon did have a lot of the fanfare. It turns out that was for a good reason.
See, again, you go back to what was USC doing? Couldn't make Bear Alexander and Pregnon work for him when that's their area of need.
That speaks volumes. If you're USC, that two guys that were not living up to their potential. I mean, Pregnon's going to be a top 20 pick. He is an absolute beast. He's a monster. And Bear Alexander has got himself drafted. He's not going to be a first day guy, but Bear Alexander got himself drafted by coming to Oregon, and that's going to be a feather in their cap anytime they're hitting the recruiting trail or hitting the portal trail, and they're going to use those two examples and be like, dude, don't go there. Come here. Look at what we've done. So, and then actually, so now we've done that, we just go back to the game. I still am a little smirking and laughing this morning that people are trying to, again, I just 48-13 with 3 minutes left in the third quarter, and somehow the narrative today, and some of it's Oregon's fault, I mentioned, some of it's the coaches and the players that are kind of feeding into it, obviously, because they didn't play up to the standard. Sure. But I'm sorry, if you watched that game and you came away with anything other than Oregon could have made that as bad as they wanted it to, then I don't know what to tell you. You just aren't. You're not watching the same.
Oregon scoring drives in the first half, and by the way, during that stretch, James Madison had 6 points, and 3 of them came off of going for it on fourth down twice. The other field goal came when they successfully executed a double pass. Yeah. That's not total flukiness, but if you need to convert 2 fourth downs to get into field goal range, you're not going to sustain that throughout a whole game. No. And then the other one was a double pass. Other than that, Oregon's scoring drives were 4 plays, 3 plays, 5 plays, 3 plays, 4 plays. They did whatever they wanted. It was like playing Portland State or Idaho in the first half. They absolutely dominated that game. I thought Dante Moore had a game where my big takeaway was, man, it's going to be really tough for him not to leave. Yeah. You play this well. You have this many highlight throws in the first half and deep balls where it's just in stride. He drops it in there. People don't realize that was something that he struggled with early in the year. We talked about that throw the ball up. Give your receiver a chance to run under it when he's wide open. That's growth. That's development. And a couple of balls to Benson showed real growth and development on his deep ball. And you could say, well, he was wide open. Yeah, but he lasered those in a couple times earlier in the year, and they missed them. Again, growth and development. He continues to show that he's just getting better and better. The running backs dominated. De'Aaron Hill, every time he touched the ball, it felt like he might score, and you could hear from the crowd the buzz of every time he touches it. That's going to be Jahmyr Gibbs level good. He's a monster.
If I'm not certain, I believe, and I'll have to go back, let me pull it up, but I believe in the first half, Oregon averaged almost 15 yards a play.
Right.
15 yards, not 50.
15, 16, something right in that wheelhouse.
I want everyone to take a moment before we start talking about why Oregon needs to be 15 yards a play. What they did, whatever they wanted.
20 yards is considered an explosive. So they're just shy of averaging an explosive every play.
Yeah,
every play.
It was just such an ass kicking. So, and I get it. Some of that is, I'm trying the best way I want to put this, because I want to be fair to JMU. Can we also say here, before I get into why, taking your foot off the gas and then trying to put it back on, I think is one of the hardest things to do in sports. Okay. Mm-hmm. Let's also give some credit to James Madison. James Madison is a really good team. James Madison is a team. Look, they are. Do they belong on the field with Oregon? No, They do not. But
if they were in the Big Ten, they would have been a little better than Purdue, a little better than Michigan State. That's roughly who they are.
It's a well-coached team that plays hard, that doesn't have the athletes to compete with Oregon. But I'll give them credit. They had pride, and they kept playing. And I didn't think they were. I thought the punt, like I said, I thought after the punt block, I thought that Oregon had broken them. And they kept chipping away, and they kept coming. So I give them credit for that, for what they are. That's a well-coached team. And for their level is a good football team. So I want to give them some credit for not rolling over and dying, because I thought at some point in the third quarter they had rolled over and died, to where I legitimately felt bad that they had to go play in this game, and that's the way their season was going to end. Because like I said, the conversation today is not that Oregon is great, it's that James Madison is shit. And I don't like that. Because that's, again, I played on teams that weren't national title teams. Doesn't mean we were bad. Just what do you want? We can't compete. I played Florida State when they won a national title with Peter Warwick and those guys, Chris Wanke. I played that team. We were a good team that year. We weren't Florida State good. Right. We play that game 50 times, we lose 50 times. Right. But I don't mean
you sucked. They were just really good. Yeah.
Didn't mean we sucked. I mean, my goodness. Like, it's anytime you do, you play against someone that just, I think, what did they say? Dan Lanning makes $11 million this year. 11. Okay. James Madison's team cost $1 million. $11 million Dan Lanning got paid this year. The entire roster for James Madison was $1 million. Yeah. Like they shouldn't be able to compete with Oregon.
Sure.
They shouldn't, and they didn't.
Right.
But they kept playing, and they didn't roll over and die. So I give them credit for doing that. So when I say they're a good team, it is within reason. But here's where I'll go back. When I said the hardest thing to me, when you are physically kicking the crap out of someone, and I mean, it's like I said, 48-13, 3 minutes left in the third quarter. You're on the sidelines. I've been there. You start taking off your tape. You start looking around saying, when do we get to come out of the game? Most of the defense was already out of the game, by the way. The vast majority of those points that were given up in the second half were against second and third team defenders.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, go back and look. Those were, Betcher and most of your defensive line. That was not Amari Washington. They were not in when those plays were going down. Thieneman. Now, some of those guys did come back in a little bit later and play some spots, but for the most part, that was second and third team defenders. So your defense is, like I said, you're loosening up your tape, you're taking off your shoulder pads, you're kind of like, you're looking around in the stands, you're like, hey, who's that up there? If you're in the Miami game, maybe you're looking for a dangerous girl. So you're just kind of, you're kind of, your mind's just off the ball, right? I've been in those, like, you're going into someone's bringing you like a Snickers bar out of the locker room. You're eating a glizzy on the sidelines, right? You're having a good old time. And then all of a sudden someone's like, hey, you got to lock in.
We got to ramp up again. They've just scored twice.
You're like, what? Huh? And it is really hard to put your foot back on the gas. That's why momentum is such a scary thing. And so I think when you take a team like JMU that has no business being on the field with them, Oregon is doing what they want, and everyone's feeling fine and happy. Everyone's doing shout. Crowds starting to get sleepy. Guys are filing out of the locker room.
Fans are leaving. I mean, it's
exactly. And then all of a sudden you look up and you get the other team that's putting their foot on the gas and is like, guys, we're not quitting. We're not quitting. We're not quitting. Those things happen. Yeah. But the idea that this was anything, and I mean anything other than just a royal ass kicking with a team that athletically and physically had no business being on the field with you, you're just not being honest. Right. And for the coaches to say that that's not up to our standard, that's fine. You can do that. You can use it for motivation, but please, no one out there believe for 1 second that this was anything other than what it was, which was just an old-fashioned ass kicking. And had Oregon wanted to, they could have scored 70. And had they wanted to, they could have held JMU to, I don't know, maybe 15 points. If they had kept the starters in there and blitzed and kept their hair on fire, JMU maybe scores, maybe 15 points, maybe. Sure. This thing easily could have been 72-15 if they wanted it, and they didn't.
Here's the other thing.
They wanted the backups to get snaps, and they did, and the backups didn't get their job done.
Here's the other thing. You watch those other first round games, and even taking Oregon's second half, just take it as a whole. You saw the first half, you saw the second half. Did anybody watch the Miami Texas A&M game? I mean,
oh yeah,
are people really that concerned about Oregon? Like, I mean, really? Because you think Oregon's defense struggled, if that's what you want to do. They gave up 500 yards. Did anybody watch Texas A&M and Miami's offense? I mean, Jesus, you want to talk about like having issues on one side of the ball. Those teams, to me, you go into that game, and I've called Texas A&M fraudulent all year. I thought that Texas A&M team was absolutely unequivocally overrated.
Yeah.
Miami's got dudes. I mean, they've got, Ruben Bain is a dude. Francis Malago is a dude. Their freshman receiver, dude. I mean, they've got real ball players, but consistently in terms of having an offense that can move the stick, they just don't have it. And that's why I've said now for about 6 weeks, Oregon can win a lot of different ways, and some of these teams cannot. They can win a rock fight. They can win a defensive struggle, but they cannot win a 35-30 game. Or they can win the 35-30 game. They cannot win a 13-6 game. We've seen Oregon play every iteration of that. Mm-hmm. So watching all these games, Oklahoma gets up 17-0, and then they realize, oh yeah, that's more points than we're ever supposed to score in one game. Let's let our offense go back down to where we normally are. And Alabama storms back. Miami, Texas A&M, not a good game. Ole Miss looked fine against a Tulane team that didn't obviously really belong in the playoff, but whatever. I think you look at Oregon and you look at that first half and say explosive, good playmakers on defense. They took their foot off the gas. This changes nothing for me. If anything, this first round, if you were ranking teams who are most dangerous, to me, you can make no argument that any of the losers are ahead of Oregon, obviously. So all you're left with is Alabama, Miami, and Ole Miss. And if we're ranking dangerous teams, to me, number one out of this group of teams that won is Oregon.
Yeah.
Oregon's offense is really explosive. Their defense flies around. It just was a really gross second half. And it happens, guys. I don't really know what to say to people who are really upset by it because, there's miscommunication. James Madison is a well-coached team. Like you said, they don't have the dudes, but they kept fighting, and they're well-coached. Mm-hmm. It's the Kirk Cignetti tree. So if anything scares you at all from this game, you'd say, okay, Kirk Cignetti's stuff still works on Oregon. But the problem with that is, with the backups where you have to really communicate and be locked in because they make you communicate. That's that Cignetti offense. That's the Cignetti system.
Yeah.
And once you rotate backups in, communication falls to the wayside a little bit, and you're already ahead, so you're not as on it about pointing out that there's a dude in motion or, hey, I think this or I got this. And because of that, James Madison feasted in the second half, but I'm not worried about it. And Oregon fans shouldn't be either. And I think we should almost get ready to turn the page and dive into Texas Tech because to me, there's nothing from this game that worries me other than Jordan Davison limping off the field. In fact, I think on the whole, most of your team stayed healthy, and we saw the return of DeCorian Moore, which is absolutely massive for this team.
Yep, and Evan Stewart didn't go, and Gary Bryant Jr. But Gary Bryant did. He just didn't do anything. I didn't see he recorded any. There was no stat. But I mean, with an extra time off, I would assume that come Texas Tech, which is 2 weeks away, basically, I'm assuming that all three of those guys will play in some shape or form. Maybe DeCorian Moore starts. He did not, but obviously he was in there. I would assume that all three of those guys play, and we'll see what happens with Jordan Davidson. But if Jordan Davidson can't go, one, it would be a blow, but two, you've got some backs. You really do.
Whittington and Hill will be just fine. You'll be fine doing some of the short yardage stuff if need be.
Yeah, you'll be fine. But hopefully, as we don't know, fingers crossed that Davidson's okay. But yeah, you came away relatively healthy. I'll say this: I learned nothing about Oregon, nothing whatsoever. It's funny that I was watching that first half and I was listening to the way that the announcers were talking about them. And I was kind of following along on Twitter and I was like, oh my God, we are going to get so over our skis about Oregon, the most dangerous team in football. And to be fair, I had this at the start of the year, right? When we watched those first three games, I was like, oh crap. Like, all right, this is better than I thought it was going to be. And look out. And it turns out that they just played some really crappy teams. And when Oregon plays crappy teams, dude, they can lay it on you, and they can lay it on you real fast. What I've seen over the season is that when they play better teams, Oregon's good. I don't think it's elite. I think it's a really good team. They can win, like you said, lots of different ways. I think Oregon's best two attributes: one, they're just deep and talented, like across the board. There's dudes, there's NFL guys at every level. And the other one is, you mentioned, they're resilient. They can win games lots of different ways. They can get in a track meet with you.
They don't seem to get down when they give up a score early. That doesn't they're not in trouble. They don't ever look or appear to be in trouble. Down late, needing a drive, they don't look afraid to execute. They look like they're always okay, which is huge.
So I think those are the things that I really like about them. But whether it's Penn State, whether it's Iowa, whether it's Wisconsin, even UW, certainly Indiana just outplayed you at home. They outplayed you, plain and simple.
Yes.
And so all of those things to me are problematic, but we've also seen the rest of the country. So what I came away, when I thought about this going into the game, was Oregon's really good. And with the exception of maybe Ohio State and I think Georgia right now, I think Oregon's as good as anyone. Indiana was proved that they were better than you, but I think Oregon's more talented, obviously. So you give them another crack at that. I'm not going to say that Oregon can't beat Indiana. I thought they were as good as anyone, because I don't think there's a great team. I really don't. Right. I just don't. I don't think there is. I think this world of NIL and the kind of the talent being spread out, I just think this is kind of the way it is, where you have talented teams, but no one just jumps at you. And I thought the two teams that scare me the most are on the other side of the bracket. Right. If you had to go through Texas Tech, then Georgia, then Ohio State to get to the national title, I'd be like, yeah, that's not going to happen. But I look at their path and I'm like, this is a really good draw for them. And that's exactly what I thought going into this game. And it's exactly what I'm leaving with it. And I just thought we are going to get so over our skis because they're beating the brakes off a team that nothing that's happening here is going to be like, look at this offense. I promise you, Texas Tech is looking at that and being like, well, that ain't us. Yeah, your offense isn't scoring 5 touchdowns and 5 drives against Texas Tech. Right? No one is going to look at that game on film and be like, well, that terrifies us. Mm-hmm. And so it went from we're over our skis about them in the first half, where I was like, dude, everyone needs to calm down, to now it's gone the other way because of what the backups did in the second or in the third and fourth quarter. And really, it was the end of the third and the fourth quarter when the second and third stringers were in. And now we've gone the other way to, well, this isn't to our standard. And what's wrong with Oregon? My God, the first one was a dumb narrative and the second one was a dumb narrative too. So there's nothing about Oregon that I learned. Nothing. I just take this as it was a warm-up game. They said they wanted to play it, and I get why. I think shaking off the rust, getting some motivation so we don't have this super ass long
receivers, some live reps, huge before a big game. Yeah.
And now, again, nothing I will take from this to me has any bearing whatsoever on Texas Tech. This is an entirely different ball game, because as Mike Riley once told me, I think we're playing the varsity this week. You just got done playing the JV. And that's like if you were playing if you were playing one of the best teams in the state, right, in high school football, and you played their JVs and you kicked the crap out of them, and then next week you had to line up and play against the varsity. Nothing you did against the JV team matters. Right. These are entirely different things. There's levels to this. So everyone just deep breath and be happy that you got a home playoff game. You got to sing, shout. The crowd was good. It wasn't a complete sellout, but I thought it was still a good environment. Most of it came away healthy. And, now we get to move on to the Orange Bowl, which Oregon's never played in. And the other thing I would take away is no one that I saw in this first round, to your point, looked like a national championship team. Now, that doesn't mean that they're the teams that weren't playing. See Georgia, see Ohio State, see Indiana, maybe even Texas Tech aren't the national title team, but there's no one that I saw that I looked at. If I was an Oregon fan, there's no one I looked at and be like, well, that worries me. Just not. So that's another positive thing I can take about. I don't know how elite Oregon is, but I don't know how elite anyone is. Certainly not the teams that we saw play this weekend.
And you look not one. You look at Texas Tech and moving the conversation ahead a little bit. You look at their schedule, and we talked about it with Oregon in their first 4 games. They looked like monsters, and there were multiple guys, including, Mateo Uiagalelei. We're like, oh, he's going to be a first-team All-American. He's got multiple sacks in the first 4 games. Well, then they got into the meat of the schedule, and he cooled off a little bit. Yeah. Go look at Texas Tech's schedule. Really, really look at who they've played. It's bad. They have not played a good team. And you can maybe squint and say, what about this or what about that? They played Utah when Utah's quarterback was hurt. So that's their best game. But Utah was not Utah in that game. And it unraveled very quickly for them. Texas Tech deserves some credit for that. And again, some of it was just Utah was banged up in that game. Beyond that, they didn't play anybody really at all.
No, I mean their best, their three best, well, I guess two because they played them twice. Their best teams were, they laid it on Utah, and Utah offensively could do absolutely nothing. And yeah, their quarterback had a bum ankle, but he did play in that, but he wasn't 100%.
That was one of his running ability is one of their weapons that was totally taken away from him.
And they played against BYU, who's a good, not great team. And BYU looked like James Madison compared to Texas Tech.
Right.
I will say this: Texas Tech's defense is NFL guys. It's NFL at all level. This will be the best. I mean, Indiana's really good. This is it. This will be an Indiana level defensive test for
Texas
Oregon.
Tech had a linebacker that just missed being a Heisman finalist.
Yes,
and he might be their third best guy in their front seven if we're talking NFL draft prospects.
Yeah, they're really good.
Yeah.
So I think when you look now, I saw Texas Tech play 3 or 4 times this year. I watched both games against BYU. God forbid, I never want to see them again. I mean, BYU just wasn't competitive. I watched the Utah game, and I did catch a little bit of the Arizona State game. Now, Texas Tech did have a backup quarterback in there, but even whichever quarterback is in the game for Texas Tech, I don't love their offense. I really don't. I think Texas Tech defense is really good. I think their offense leaves a lot of meat on the bone. So from a defensive standpoint, this is as tough as Oregon will face. And the thing that would worry me a little bit, if I'm a Duck fan, is when Oregon has played better defenses, right? When they've played Iowa, second half against Penn State, certainly Indiana. There have been defenses, even UW's defense for 3 quarters, right? Really did a nice job of hemming in Oregon. As good as Oregon's offense is, we've seen defenses grind these things down and force Oregon to play a low scoring game. And when you have an offense like Texas Tech that I don't love, I think they're bad in the red zone. So when you watch them, the numbers look good when you look at them, but if you've actually seen them play, it's not the most efficient offense in the world by any stretch of the imagination. And so when you give a team like that and your defense lets you play with extra possessions and drag you into deep water, those are the games that scare me, because Oregon's still more talented than Texas Tech, but we've seen Oregon get drug into these games, and then they become coin flips, right? Yep. Comes down to a play or two, comes down to a huge drive against Iowa, comes down to, Malik Benson, breaking that big touchdown, splitting 4 guys against UW. So I do think that this will be as good. This defensively, this is going to be a massive, massive test for Oregon.
Yes.
But Oregon, I think, is the better team, and Oregon's defense is really good. And I think Oregon's defense is going to give Texas Tech a lot of problems. So then it comes down to which offense do I trust more? I trust Oregon's offense a lot more than I do Texas Tech. If we're going to say 2 elite defenses, and this game is played, somewhere in the teens or low 20s, I trust Oregon to win that game more so than Texas Tech, because Texas Tech's played in one of those games all year, and that was 26-22, and that was Arizona State. And Arizona State got him. Look at every other game that Texas Tech has played. It has been
go over it, man. It's Arkansas, Pine Bluff. It's Kent State, Oregon State, Utah. Again, quarterback hurt. Houston, whose season was not good. Kansas, they lost to Arizona State. They beat Oklahoma State, Kansas State, BYU, Central Florida, West Virginia, BYU.
Yeah,
there is not a game on there, on that whole schedule, that's as tough as Iowa. There's not a game on that schedule that's anywhere near Indiana. I mean, they really played a B schedule. And my only point with that, because I think they're good, my only point with that is go back and look at the first 4 weeks of Oregon's season. When we were talking about Mateo Uiagalelei is going to be an All-American. Amari Washington's an All-American. Brandon Finney might be the best freshman corner in the country. He might be one of the best corners we've seen in the country. And then when you started week in, week out playing real opponents, it scaled back. Texas Tech never had that scale back at any point in their year where it's like, we've got 3 really tough games in a row where we've got to be dialed. It was like, BYU, okay. And by the way, to me, BYU was a 6-6 Big Ten team. It's just they played in a bad conference. This happened last year too, where the Big 12 is a Power 4 on paper, but when you really look at it, there are 2 or 3 pretty good teams. How did Dion have so much success at Colorado? They had a couple of really good players. I'm not taking anything away from Travis Hunter and Shedeur, but that conference sucks, especially on defense. So those guys went absolutely bonkers statistically, and people went, Shadeur's the man. Well, Shadeur's fine. He's a third round-ish guy. Travis
the only
Hunter
thing I'll say,
look all world in the NFL on either side, but he can dominate the Big 12.
The only thing I'll tell you about that is having watched, because I watch a lot of Big 12 because I watch BYU, right? Mm-hmm. So I get a nice glimpse of the Big 12. Everything you said, totally agree with, totally accurate. This isn't a Big 12 team. It's just not. Texas Tech.
That's true. That's true.
Texas Tech is not built like a Big 12 team. Texas Tech, and I don't know if Texas Tech is SEC or Big 10 or something like that, but when you look, especially on the defensive side of the ball, again, offensively, they've got some guys. But on the defensive side of the ball, this is not a Big 12 defense. It's just not. And this is as good. This is a better, this is a more talented version of Indiana's defense. It is. These guys hunt. They don't need to bring a lot of pressure. They can get you with 4. They can run a lot of the simulated looks. They can do some overload stuff and still play coverage behind it. There's NFL guys at every level. Their linebackers are elite. Their 2 defensive ends are elite. They got a run stuffer. And this is where I'll just point out, Indiana held Oregon to 81 yards rushing. 81 yards rushing. And, we've seen Iowa grind Oregon to a halt. We've seen Indiana grind them to a halt.
True.
And that's the one that worries me. If Oregon can't run the ball, and they are forced to be in, and maybe the receivers coming back makes a big difference. But by the way, most of those receivers were playing, with the exception of Evan Stewart, when they played Indiana. Yeah. If those guys come back, maybe that's a little bit different. But so much of what Oregon does is predicated on being able to run the ball. And if Texas Tech can take away the rush, as good as Oregon's 2 tackles have been, you can get pressure on Dante Moore. We've seen Dante Moore get a little confused at times.
And what do they both struggle with? Speed.
Yes, speed.
And what is David Bailey? If David Bailey's not a power edge, he's undersized, but he's speed all day long. And Harkey has been a problem for both Harkey and World all season.
They're both big bodies that aren't.
They're both right tackles.
They're both right tackles. Yes, they're big physical maulers, and they both play with edges. But you can expose their athleticism. They are not. This is not Penei Sewell. They just aren't. When you look at some of the great tackles that Oregon have had, these aren't it.
They're both guards in the NFL, by the way.
Yeah,
both of these guys will end up sliding inside.
Yes,
guards.
And so you look at when Moore has struggled a little bit, it's when he's gotten some different looks. Even the interception that he threw against JMU, right? Kind of back foot, kind of lobbed it up there. Bad throw, bad decision. Again, does it really matter in that game? No. And then the other one wasn't his fault. That was the other pick wasn't his fault. That was one of those that was just, sometimes the ball kicks up, but that's not on Dante Moore. But, these are, this is going to be a serious test. So I agree with you on the Big 12 thing. Arizona State, by the way, damn near beat Texas last year as a Big 12 team. So yes, the Big 12 is not, trust me, having watched it, it is not an elite conference by any stretch of the imagination. But I just think that every now and then, Clemson was this way when Clemson won a national title, and I'm not saying Texas Tech is Clemson, but
the ACC and the Big 12 are similar in that.
Similar, and when Clemson was really cooking, that wasn't an ACC team. That was a team that was built to play with the big boys, and at least on one side of the ball, Texas Tech is built to play with the big boys. My question is, again, the other side, because the Big 12 is kind of dog piss, as you said, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I just don't know. When I look at their point totals, right? 34 against Oregon, 35 against Houston, 42 against Kansas, 42 against Oklahoma State, right? 29 against BYU, 34 against BYU. Those are not good defenses that they're playing against. So I go back to that Arizona State game.
It's the eye test too, though. It's the eye test too. Like, you've watched Texas Tech. They just look like they're better, and they kind of they're not playing very good competition, and they piece together points, and by the end of it, because their defenses put them in short field situations where they're in advantageous situations a bunch, they end up with 34 somehow. but it is not a sexy 34. It is not a scary 42. It's the
turnovers,
couldn't move the ball at all, and they got the ball at the 23 times. So they ended up with 34 points.
And that's when both times they've played BYU, it's been like that.
Yeah.
But it's like it did, and BYU holds them to a field goal, or Morton, their quarterback, he throws a decent deep ball, but I feel like that's kind of I feel like their offense is, hey, let's throw it up to a couple big athletic receivers and kind of see what happens. Like they've got 3 or 4 receivers that average like 13 yards a catch, but when it's 3rd and 4, they don't really scare me. I feel like their offense is, let's just throw it outside of the numbers, and we're just going to keep taking big shots, and eventually we'll hit some of those. And if we don't get them and we kick field goals, or we have to punt the ball, no big deal. Our defense will get it back for us.
Or you eventually it's an arm punt. And good luck going 60 yards on this defense. That's been their philosophy in the Big 12.
And so I have no doubt that Texas Tech is going to give Oregon a tremendous amount of problem on the defensive side of the ball. I'm just not certain they can score enough. And if their defense isn't lights out and isn't just playing absolute nails, then they don't win this game. So this goes kind of back to your original point of, I think Oregon can win this game multiple ways, and I think Texas Tech needs to win it one way. And we'll see which way that is, because we've seen teams this year drag Oregon into that deep water, and Oregon has come out the other side, but they've been close.
Yes.
Again, Iowa, trust me, this is a much better version of the Iowa Hawkeyes that you're about to see, and Iowa damn near had Oregon. With a minute and a half left, Oregon had to go the length of the field, and they did. But it will be harder to go the length of the field on this Texas Tech team. So I think this is a nice matchup. I think it's going to be a fun game, but I think it's a game that Oregon can and probably should win. They're favored by what, 1.5?
See, I think Oregon should be favored by 6. I really don't have very much respect for this Texas Tech team. Having watched them 3 or 4 times, they leave a lot to be desired on offense. And I can't say enough watching the Big 12. They play not very good teams, and they sort of just piecemeal games together, and they're ahead 20-7, and then they get a pick and they get the ball to 20, and then it's 27-7, and then the game's over and they score a garbage touchdown. Hey, 34-7, they dominated. And it's like, it was a 2-score game into the third. Their offense didn't really do a whole lot. There was a lot of that from Texas Tech. This is just not some explosive, dynamic offense and a defense that locks you up. This is a defense that locks you up, and an offense that tries to bite off big chunks through the air a lot of the time, with a run game that's fine. I really don't like this Texas Tech offense very much. I think they're a good team. I think they deserve to be in the college football playoff unequivocally. I'm not saying that. They do not have a game this year, period. You cannot sell me on this. I don't even know if they have a half that you can watch them for the whole half and go, holy God, that's a good team. Like, they're good on offense, they're good on defense. They have stretches where their defense dominates and their offense executes, and they look good. But they never put the fear of God in you. And I'm not saying that makes them bad. But when you compare that to Georgia, Indiana, and Ohio State, I think each of those teams have multiple stretches you can point to where they go, we look like the best team in the country. Just watch this game. Watch 3 quarters. And even Texas Tech wins over BYU. That last BYU game where they won by a ton, what was it, 14-7.5?
Something like that.
I mean, that's what I mean is there's never just we went out and played a good team and kicked their ass. They don't have that, period, anywhere for a whole 4 quarters.
Yeah, it was 13-7 in the Big 12 title game. And but it goes back to your point. Oregon or BYU in the Big 12 title game, they went on their first drive. They went like 92 yards, went down the field and scored, ran the ball.
Yep.
I believe it was the middle of the 4th quarter, and outside of that drive, the first drive, which just was and I remember this because I was sitting on my couch.
Right. And we texted about it at one point.
I was sitting on my couch and I was like, oh my God. And I was like doing some quick math because I was like, what the shit? And if you take away that first drive with like 6 minutes left to go in the 4th quarter, BYU had 81 yards of offense. 81.
That's what they do to you.
They had 81. They had 81 yards. And then eventually, like you said, the offense just, the dam breaks. They get short fields and they hit on a couple big plays. And you kind of look up and you're like, well, here it is. And it's built like those old, like the old Ravens teams. And we've seen NFL teams win this way. So
yes.
You know, I'm excited about this. I'm excited about the game, but I just think it's a favorable matchup. I think Oregon, when you looked at the way the playoff thing broke out, I do not think Oregon is one of the 2 best teams in the country, but the way this has broken out for them, I think they have a really good path to make a run here. Because I think that, you know, this, and then let's say it's Indiana. I think those are teams that Oregon is more talented than, and that Oregon can beat, even though Indiana has proven at least once this year that they were just better than you. Indiana also is not the deepest team in the world, just lost their best defensive player, or one of their best, the leading tackler for losses and sack man in the Big Ten. So, you know, that's a big blow for them too. But, you know, this is breaking out well, and we'll get to see here in a couple weeks just which is more Oregon, the first half of the James Madison game or the second half. And I'd be willing to wager it's more towards the first half than it is the second.
I think this Oregon team makes the title game. I think they probably lose in the title game because they're maybe, you know, the 2 best teams in the country are down in that lower bracket. I think Oregon ends up making the title game. I think they're going to beat Texas Tech. I think if you give them another shot against Indiana, they come in playing better than they did. I think they played a C+ game, and I think that was Indiana's Super Bowl. And Oregon thought what everybody thought based on the tape from the year before, what you thought coming into the season, not taking shots at you. Just everybody thought you could bully Indiana. And Oregon was still, they hadn't proven that you couldn't bully Indiana yet. So Oregon went in and said, we can be vanilla, we'll execute, we'll just bully them and we'll win. It turned out they couldn't bully them. As you pointed out, they couldn't run. And that was the first time people started going, oh, this Indiana team's a tier better than they were last year. Not just the same rinse, repeat, same group. They're better. Yep. And I think Oregon learned a lot from that game. I think Oregon is much better than they were on that day. And I think Indiana is as good or maybe a little bit worse than they were on that day. I think that was their, you know, that was their great game. That was the game you point to and say, that's the best football we played all year. Our defense was in lockstep. We shut Oregon down. They were confused all day by the blitzes we were sending at them. We stopped the run. They were just discombobulated. And on offense, it was tough sledding at times with Oregon, but every time we needed to make a play, we made one. Not a lot of drops, not a lot of bad throws. You did have the 1 pick 6, but other than that, we played a great football game. And I think Oregon went, man, we played like dog shit on offense and defense in that game. And it was still, a 1-score game in the fourth quarter. It's just it unraveled for them. So I think Oregon makes the title game. I think they beat Texas Tech. I think they beat Indiana. I do think there's a world where they blast Texas Tech. I think there's also a world where Texas Tech finds a way to win if that defense is as good as they think, or as some people think. But again, I've watched this Texas Tech team. They have not played a good team yet and just stomped on their necks. They just haven't. They aren't that squad. Oregon's going to come in more fresh. Texas Tech's offense at times looks uneven. They're also potentially going into a game where they're going to look uneven after not having played for more than a month. I think all of those things stack up to where if Oregon hits the ground running and gets up early and finds a way to score early, it takes Texas Tech out of who they are. Again, they want to play a rock fight, and then the dam breaks, and then they run away from you in the second half. Oregon might not allow that. And if Oregon doesn't allow that, what does Texas Tech do? Because that's what Texas Tech has been able to do to everybody all year, except Arizona State, and they lost.
Yeah.
So
that's all valid, all fair points.
Where do you think Oregon ends up? Where do you, if you said where you think they lose this next game, you think they lose in this semis?
I think they beat Texas Tech. I'm assuming that Indiana takes care of business against Alabama, and I don't know. That's a coin flip game. Look, I'll say Indiana because to me, Indiana went into your house and was better than you. I just thought Indiana was the better team. I know the injury along the defensive front scares me a little bit, but Indiana was better. And yeah, you could say Oregon didn't play their best game. It was at home, and Indiana was flat out better than you in almost every turn. So I'll say Indiana. Wouldn't shock me if Oregon won that game. I said it before, and I'll say it again. There's nothing about Oregon that I've looked at that says that on a consistent basis, Oregon can string together 4 games against increasingly better teams to win a national championship.
Sure.
Can they get there? Yeah. Do I think they can win a national title? I mean, you can, but I'm not going to predict it, and I'm not going to disrespect Indiana by saying Oregon beats them after I saw it. Wouldn't shock me, but I think they beat Texas Tech, and then I think Indiana gets them again, and I guess that's where I go, but I don't feel great about that. I really don't. Just like, again, because I'm a big believer of talent. You know, I think, and this goes back to the group of five conversation that everyone's going to have, and we're going to crap over James Madison and, you know, do people belong? Football, you know, this is why the NFL is a better product than college. It just is. Because the NFL is more like NASCAR. Everyone's supposed to have the same car. And yeah, you can make tweaks to it, but you know, you got college football where some people are driving Porsches and other people are driving Honda Civics.
Yep.
And that is just always going to make for these lopsided games. Like, we can sit here and we can poke fun at obviously Tulane and James Madison, which did nothing to help the cause of group of six teams. But allow me to point out that last year in the playoffs, it was 34-0 Ohio State over Oregon. Penn State was up 38-3 on SMU.
Yep.
Ohio State was up 42-10 on Tennessee, and Notre Dame was up 27-3 on Indiana.
Yeah, we claimed the system was broken last year with all the juggernauts in.
So
here's the thing.
It's like,
this also isn't the. Go ahead.
No, I just like So at the end of the day, like, I'm like, lopsided things happen, but I'm just a big talent guy. It's why I think Oregon will eventually win a national championship. I don't think it's this year, but when you start stacking 4- and 5-star kids together at the rate of which Oregon is doing it, and then you are well coached, and I do think they're well coached. I do. And you have the resources to keep those teams together and you're not getting pilfered. I think it's a matter of time before Oregon breaks through. I just haven't seen it this year. They don't have that look to me of a team that's going to string it together for a month straight. Doesn't mean they can't. I just haven't seen it.
Yeah.
But I guess I didn't see it with Ohio State last year, and Ohio State managed to do it in the playoffs, and they strung it together. And all of a sudden, the bones of that Ohio State team looked like holy crap. And I think the bones of Ohio State's team this year look like holy crap. I don't this year with Oregon. I think most of Oregon's best players are underclassmen.
Most of Oregon's best players are a year or two away from being their best selves.
So that's
people see Sadiq and Moore and Uiagalelei and think they're finished products. By the way, Uiagalelei might need to come back.
Could be. So that's where I say, whether it's Indiana or whether it's the national title game, I think Oregon comes up a little short this year. But so I think we both agree with that. I think you just have them going a week further than I do, and I wouldn't be shocked. But honestly, if Texas Tech beat them 21-18, I wouldn't be shocked either.
Me either.
I just don't think there is an elite team. I think Ohio State is elite, but they got beat by Indiana. And it's a weird thing. I didn't think that Ohio State really had a sense of urgency in that game. Again, I think if that game's played 10 times, I think Ohio, like when I watched those, so Indiana beat Oregon and they beat Ohio State. Indiana to me looked like the better team. I thought Ohio State was the better team. I think Ohio State shot themselves in the you-know-what so many different times, and the missed field goal, and it was one of those days where I think Ohio State looks back on that and be like, oh my God, what were we doing? Whereas I think Indiana looked at Oregon and you watch that and think Indiana was the better team. They beat us. We can play better, which is why I think Oregon can win that game. But I still think the best team over there is Ohio State. And if they wake up and play the way they're capable, I think everyone's playing for second place in this tournament. But outside of that, even Georgia, on any given Saturday, Oregon can beat any one of these teams. Sure. There is not truly an elite team. And I just think the way the portal is now in NIL, I'm not certain if we're going to get any more of these truly just stacked, loaded, scary, just dominant teams. I just don't know. I just think that era of football may be done.
This year's champion to me loses by 14 to most of the teams that won a decade ago.
I feel that is probably pretty accurate. Yeah.
There's that. And then the other thing is, and it's the laziest thing, like I saw so many people who I wouldn't say were college football experts, but they chat about it, who were like doing the very, very brave, like, great job, guys. You guys are so brave for pointing this out. Hey, Tulane and James Madison probably shouldn't be like the number of people who try to do the holier than thou college football thing all the time and think about things at the very surface level. Like, this isn't right. Free agency for players is bad. There's so many guys in the portal and they're all getting paid. No, most of the guys in the portal are being kicked off their team by the coaching staff. Like, the dudes who do the very, very surface were absolutely crapping themselves to get to Twitter to be like, hey, James Madison and Tulane shouldn't be it. Shut up. Yeah. Everybody knows that. The ACC screwed up. So the reason they're in, let's have an honest conversation, because nobody in the college football playoff committee thought that was the best thing. One, the ACC screwed up their own rules, and they have since changed them. So Tulane wouldn't have gotten in because the ACC champion would have been somebody else. They would have been higher. They would have got in there. That takes Tulane's now out next year. The reason James Madison is in is to avoid a lawsuit. Yeah. Because if you keep out all of the group of 5 teams and the Power 4 teams dictate the playoff, you are eliminating the group of 5, and they have a legit lawsuit. And they it'll
be an antitrust suit, and it would be billions of dollars. So yeah, there is no,
the only reason James Madison is in is so the NCAA can avoid a lawsuit. So please, for the love of God, spare me the tweet that's like, James Madison didn't. Good job, guys. Notre Dame's not in. And James, that's not like a dunk on the committee. Yeah. The NCAA has dictated if we don't do it this way, we're going to get sued into oblivion. And by the way, we don't want to get sued by Notre Dame either. So we threw them a bone, and next year they get in as long as they don't suck. Like, this is all, again, the very surface of what people talk about with college football. I think people hear things and they think they know. It's, again, the transfer portal. We're setting a record number of kids in the transfer portal. You know what's actually happening? All these schools figure now they can buy good players. So anybody who's just like a second or third string developmental guy, they kick them out of the program because they're like, we'll spend that money and go get a guy. It literally comes down to coaching staff greed to go get better players and program greed to get better and better players. That's what's happening with the transfer portal. It is not all these kids entering the portal to get a bunch of money. And people will point to the Dante Moore. People will point to the who's the quarterback just this weekend that entered the portal? It was a big deal. Rocco Becht out of
Iowa State.
99% of the guys that are entering the portal are not Rocco Becht. Roughly 65 to 70% of them are there because the coach said get in there, and about 30% of them are done. No one's going to pick them up. Their careers are basically over. You washed out. But we use those numbers and the ever-expanding transfer portal number to say, look how greedy the kids are. Look how broken the system is. It gives schools an out to say, get your ass in the portal. We do not want you on our team. And if you think that's a big school problem, I am here to tell you, a group of 5 assistant coach told me they actively de-recruit about a third to half of their roster every offseason. They tell kids leave.
Yeah.
So if you think the portal, if you think JMU being in the college football playoff is, you're dunking on it by being like, oh, they screwed up the bracket and look at all these greedy kids. I'm telling you, you are seeing surface and you're missing all of what's really going on. All of it. It's the same thing with these quarterbacks who put Oregon on their list of schools that they enter the transfer portal and they immediately say Oregon's interested. 1, that raises your value. And 2, of course you want people to think Oregon's been 3 for 3 on developing quarterbacks and turning them into superstars. So if Oregon's interested in you, that makes Michigan State take a look. That makes Iowa State take a look. Because, God, Oregon's interested in this kid. He must be great. Oregon may not even be interested in him at all. Please, please, for the love of God, when it comes to college football, be willing to go past the surface because you're missing it. You're missing the big picture. Indiana's number 1. Vanderbilt had a Heisman finalist. Things are happening in college football that have never happened before.
Yeah.
Because the power dynamic the power wheel is broken. Yeah. And yes, there are a lot of bad things because you broke the wheel, to put it in Game of Thrones terms. You broke the wheel. So there's a lot of weird stuff going on, some of it good, some of it bad. But don't just point to surface over and over and tell me how broken it is, because there are some ways that college football is better than it's ever been. Ratings, player empowerment, and coaches having the ability to climb as they see fit, players having the ability to climb as they see fit. Those are some really good things.
And competitive balance, although maybe not competitive balance at the lower levels. And you brought up a great point with the antitrust thing. So please stop. There will always be group of 5 access, 100%. They'll fix it. They'll fix it so there's not 2. But there will always be group of 5. There has to be. Otherwise, again, the lawsuits are coming. And it doesn't sound like the government is going to give the college football antitrust. And thank God they're not going to, because that's absurd that you need the government to give you special exemption from being able to save your own ass because you can't control it. By the way, thank you, Lane Kiffin. You're the one that officially killed that stupid SCORE Act in Congress. I appreciate that. It's the one good thing Lane Kiffin has done. Tip of the cap.
Even Lane Kiffin, blind squirrel.
Blind squirrel. But again, every time one of these group of 5 teams gets blown out, I'll point out Georgia beat TCU 65-7. Oregon beat Florida State 59-20. Alabama beat Michigan State 38-0. Clemson beat Ohio State 31-0. These are all college football playoff games, by the way. Yep. Like since we went to the college football playoff, Alabama beat Ohio State 52-24. I mean, we can go on and on.
It turns out first round games are often blowouts.
Yeah, it turns out that there's a handful of teams in college football that are usually much better than the back half of the top 12 teams. Right. The only thing I'll say that you mentioned that you thought that this year's national title would lose significantly by a team from 10 years ago, and I agree. Mm-hmm. I just think it's harder. If you take the way the talent was. What's the word I'm looking for? Like the way it was condensed,
dispersed.
Right?
I mean, it was
the way it's dispersed now.
Yeah,
it's way more distributed than it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine a team like Ohio State, and then they've got 3 of Oregon's best players, and they've got 2 of let's say Penn State's best players, and they've got 2 of Texas's best player, and you put that on that Ohio State roster that you have. That's that Miami team from like 2001.
Right.
That's that USC team with Reggie Bush and all those guys. That's that team.
Right.
And it's like, oh my God. And you can't have that anymore. There's not enough money to pay kids. Everyone can go their own places. The other thing that kind of sucks, one, David was not beating Goliath in college football. It wasn't happening 20 years ago. And it's not going to happen now. It is harder than ever for those schools to do it because, unfortunately, and I mentioned earlier, if you're an all-conference player in the Mountain West, if you're an all-conference player in the Pac-12, in the Sun Belt, in the American, whatever, if you're an all-conference player at any of those, you are not in that conference the next year. You're not. Honestly, if you're an all-conference player in the Big 12, there's a good chance that you are not in the Big 12 the next year. The truth of the matter is the ACC and the Big 12, you got a couple of schools that have deep pockets. I mean, you had Kenny Dillingham. Literally, did you see the Dillingham press conference? He resigned at Arizona State.
I saw that he resigned. I didn't watch the press conference.
So he resigned, and it's an interesting thing, but he said, what we need is a booster that cares.
Oh, and he said, I did see that.
And he said, I need someone to write a $20 million check. He goes, there's no one in the Valley that can write $20 million checks. He goes, there's got to be someone. I just think it's a weird, crazy world that we're living in where you have head coaches begging someone to write them a $20 million check.
Yeah.
And there's a couple schools in the Big 12, see Texas Tech, and a couple schools in the ACC that can write that check to maybe keep those kids. But the Tulanes and the James Madisons and the South Floridas and places like this, Oregon State, Washington State. I mean, think about that. Washington State had John Mateer and Cam Ward and developed both of those guys and gone. Anyone that's worth a damn at James Madison's already playing at Indiana. Anyone that's worth a damn right now at James Madison is going to UCLA next year. This is the way it is. So unfortunately for those schools, it was damn near impossible for you to really compete in the old world. It's really impossible to compete in this world because you can't keep a roster. You can't. Mm-hmm. You every year you have to grow and develop, and grow and develop usually takes a couple seasons, right? And the moment a kid pops, he's gone. And so that's the one real big downside to me is the little guy just isn't going to be able to field a real competitive team.
Jaquiz Rogers would never break career rushing records in Corvallis. He'd have one really good year. He might break the freshman record.
Yeah.
And then he gone. I mean,
Mike Hass would not win the Blitnikoff at Oregon State. Right. Luke Falk would not be, I don't know if he still is, but at one point he was the all-time leading passer in the Pac-12. Yep. Luke Falk would not do that. This is just the reality of the world that we live in. And that's the part of it that I think kind of stinks. But
But I see your Washington State, Oregon State, and raise you. Indiana's number one, and Vanderbilt had a Heisman finalist. And if you had to hand pick who had the better football legacy, and I know conference realignment is what killed those schools, so that's not fair because once you're relegated, you're done. But if I said who has the better history in football, Indiana, Vanderbilt, or Oregon State, we'd take Oregon State. They have a Fiesta Bowl win. They have a Heisman Trophy. And look, Indiana's now number one, and Vanderbilt was relevant in the SEC and favored in an SEC home game for the first time in like 8 years. You can ride the wave and have it go your way, to use a pro Tulane, I guess, comparison there. I think once you're relegated, you're done. But as long as you're up there and you hire the right guy and you invest the right way, like there's hope for UCLA, right? Yeah. There's hope for Northwestern. There's hope for some of these schools that have had things go awry in the last couple of years, that if you do it right, you make the right hire, you invest the right way, you can be the number one team in the country, because Indiana did it, and no one would have picked Indiana a power rating of the top 40 teams in college football. The only thing I'll say about Vanderbilt and Indiana is they're in the SEC and the Big Ten. That's what I'm saying. They're in power. Once you're in a power conference, you can do anything. But if you're relegated, you're done. I still don't know. I still don't know if you can do it in the ACC. I don't know if you can do it in the Big 12. The only way you can do it in those is if you have a Texas. Arizona State. Arizona State never did anything in the Pac-12, and I'm not certain that Arizona State's going to do anything going forward. But they made the college playoff and won a game. They made the college football playoff, losing, and they lost 3 games. And I just like, to me, if you're going to do it there, Texas Tech, you have to have 2 kids that are billionaires. Kenny Dillingham, I'm just not certain that literally going publicly, and I thought it was kind of funny, and I get why he did it, but he wasn't kidding, though. He wasn't kidding. The idea that your head coach that just re-signed is having to beg a stranger, please, someone write me a check for $20 million. That's not, I'm sorry, Arizona State, it's fool's gold. They're not, you're not real. Because even if that guy does stroke a check for $20 million, doesn't do anything, it buys you a year. The difference is, like Texas Tech and SMU, they've got guys that are worth billions, and they will keep stroking $20 million checks. And so those guys can kind of keep it going. The interesting one too with that is, as far as, kind of writing those checks, we look at like Texas A&M and we look at Miami, right? And they have very robust NILs. And I was watching that Texas Tech, or not Texas Tech, excuse me. I was thinking Texas A&M. Sorry. My Texas is confused. Texas A&M has a huge fan base. They have big money. We know that. Miami is not a huge donor base, but they do have guys with money, and they have a robust NIL, and Cristobal is recruiting well. But it's not, it's not never ending money. And I was sitting there watching that A&M and Miami game, and I thought to myself, oh my God, how much did they pay for this quarterback play? Both sides. I looked at Marcel Reed, and I looked at Carson Beck, and I know Carson Beck cost more because he was a little bit older. Reed was a younger guy, but I'll bet you Marcel Reed cost him $2 million, and Carson Beck cost him like 3.5, 4. And dude, if I'm a guy writing that check, I'm sitting around being like, what the F did I just pay for? Oregon State paid 1.5 for Malik Murphy. You don't think they regret that? I just, we've seen Troy Aikman came out and made a comment about, he stroked a check for Dante Moore, and that didn't last. And that's the other thing. I'll be interested to see in a couple years, how many of these guys, if I have unlimited money, if I got billions, that's different. But if I'm just a rich guy and I'm stroking $3, $4, $5 million checks every year, Bryce Underwood, at Michigan, who was that Larry Ellison, I know he's got more money than God, and Portnoy, supposedly they're the ones that ponied up to get Underwood at Michigan. And I was like, I paid $4 million for that. And I get into year 2, Dominic Raiola, or not Dominic, excuse me, Dylan. Dominic is the dad. Yeah, he was an offensive lineman when I was there too. I always get that confused, but Nebraska paid a lot of money for that. And I'm like, really? Like, I bet they made money in terms of marketing, and because once they got him, they were on TV. Remember, for the last 2 years, everyone's been spitting out that Nebraska's going to figure it out. Here's the thing. I'm just saying. I just wonder. But that's why you're seeing people having private equity invest in the team. You partially own the team. That's why. Because some of these schools are going, some of these boosters are going, I'm not giving you $5 million every year in perpetuity unless I own some of this and can make some money off of it. And that's why it's not about people buying the team to just say they bought the team. It's a way to make that sustainable, that investment sustainable. You will own part of this team. And it's scary. It's a slippery slope, but that's why we're seeing that push now. And that's a big thing to watch, because that school's trying to find a way to make this thing sustainable, to continue to get the money they get. And if it fails and they stop getting that money every year, what happens then? Do they fall off? Does Utah suddenly go, we don't have the money to keep this rolling? Does a BYU, do they have people that own, are they willing to give money $10 million a year? Or do you start seeing them fall back to the wayside? Oregon luckily has Phil Knight and Nike, and that's tied together so well that money ain't going anywhere. Regardless of what happens with private equity, Nike's like, yeah, we have a business tied to Oregon. We make money when Oregon's good. We invest in Oregon essentially as Nike. So Oregon finds a way to make that worth their while. But some of these schools are just having investors fork over their $2 million a year, and now they want to cut. They want a piece of the pie.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, man, I would be, unless I just had so much money that it just didn't matter, like truly FU money, where I'm worth billions of dollars, and every day I'm making $5 million. You watch the index, and like, oh, he's up this, down that. I mean, that's one thing, man. But let's say even if I'm worth $300-400 million bucks, and you're telling me, hey, I got to write a check for $3 million to go get some freshman quarterback, and then I watch him play, at some point I'm like, and then he's gone in a year. That's the Troy Aikman thing. Troy was like, really? I don't get a thank you. I don't get anything. It's just like, I paid a lot of money. I paid $3 million to bring this kid here. He gets benched, and then he goes somewhere else, and then like that money's just gone. And I'm like, no, man, I ain't doing that. And so some of this stuff is going to get figured out. We are in the early days of this, and I don't know where it all settles, but I just think that is an interesting, it just struck me when I was watching that game. I was like, this quarterback play is effing awful. I'm watching A&M Miami play, and both of those quarterbacks are just warmed over garbage. And I shouldn't say that about a college kid, but dude, Carson Beck,
Arch Manning, Carson Beck, Marcel Reed. Three guys that have taken the most disdain from you here this year.
Stealing money. Dude, Carson Beck has stolen more money than like that. That guy, he should be charged with grand theft. How much money has that guy gotten to do exactly jack S?
Yeah.
And Marcel Reed, I mean, he's a nice athletic guy, but again, they got down there, and I was sitting there like they were getting ready to punch that ball in to like, oh, are we going to see a nice comeback here from A&M and tie this game? And they were down there, and I was like sitting on my couch, and I was like, dude, they better not let him throw this ball. I couldn't believe, like, if I'm Mike Elko, I'm like, dude, we are running quarterback draw 4 times in a row. Yeah, he puts that thing up in the air, and I just was laughing to myself, and I was like, what does that say as a viewer when I'm watching a game and they're on like the 6-yard line or something, whatever it was? I mean, it was
they were right there.
They were right there. And my first thought is, dude, this better not go in the air. You better not throw this ball. And they did. Sure enough, they throw the ball, and I'm like, well, there's the interception. Right. It's just it's just a weird thing that we pay so much money for that position in this sport. And boy, there is some really, really, you think there's bad quarterback play in the NFL? Stop it. There is awful, and I mean atrocious quarterback play, even at at least when we get into the NFL playoffs. Like, there's not going to be bad quarterback play. Dude, there's bad quarterback play in the college football playoff, which again goes back to, if you want to take something that you can like about Oregon, they have really good quarterback play. Second to none. Maybe Mendoza, but I mean, there is really elite play at the most important position if you want to take something, that gives you real hope about Oregon.
On that happy note, let's get the heck out of here, because the Titans-Chiefs game's getting really, really spicy. It's 2-0. The Titans lead the Chiefs. So let's get out and watch that game. All right. Thanks, Suke. Appreciate you, man.